I want to tell you that Glynn, although he's been blind since birth, hadn't let that slow him down. This man is dynamic, adventuresome, accomplished. He made the dean's list at Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas. I never made the dean's list. I made the principal's list several times when the teachers took me up there. Glynn graduated cum laude in 1971 with a degree in European history and public speaking. He speaks fluent French, is conversational in Russian, German, and Spanish. I'm not even real good in English. Glynn is an avid ham radio operator, and he has been involved in several life-saving calls. For the majority of his life, he's been a public speaker and teacher. Glynn has had audiences with kings. He's had audiences with, he's been a radio television spokesman for the Irish National Council, where he just got back not too long ago from a trip to Ireland. He's been, that was the Irish National Council for the Blind. Excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous. Glynn is doing fine. Glynn has reached thousands of people, many visually impaired, with the gospel message. He and his family have committed themselves to the development of Insight International, a Braille outreach worldwide ministry. It's Glynn's vision that free biblical literature and audio cassettes for the visually impaired be available so that more souls can know and respond to our Lord. The need for that material, Glynn says, is greater than you could possibly imagine. And without any further slip-ups by Milt, I want to give you Glynn Langston. Glynn, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Milt, and good morning, everyone. Just remember, all of you could walk out, and I wouldn't know if you're quiet, okay?
I want to add one thing.
All right.
Glynn is accompanied here today by his lovely wife, Ann. She's seated right here in the front row. And he and Ann have two children, Elise and Andrew. And so as you're praying, you can remember all of them in your prayers. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry I left that out initially, but like I said, Glynn is accustomed to this public speaking. Milt is not.
Don't you worry. He did a good job, Milt, for all that you said. The check's in the mail, you know. I get nervous because when people say things about what the Lord has allowed me to accomplish with the help of good parents and good teachers and a good wife that puts up with me. It reminds me of the man who was speaking, and they said this man made $1 million in California in the fruit growing. And he got up, he said, actually, it wasn't $1 million, it was $5 million. And he said, it wasn't fruit growing. He said, those facts are essentially correct, but he said it wasn't fruit growing, it was oil. And he said it wasn't California, it was Texas. And it wasn't me, it was my brother. And he didn't make it, he lost it. So, you know, I don't know. It's great to be here. We have a long relationship, and I'm so grateful for the eldership who has assisted and the mission committee that has helped guide in the work that the Lord is letting us do. You see, it all started in God's providence with a man who worshiped with us, a man and his wife. Their names were John and Charlotte. You'll know who they were. They were down in Bayshore, where my parents worshiped down near Galveston, near Houston. We got to know John. One day, John says, we're moving back to Fort Worth. And they did. And after some time, he introduced us to Western Hills. If that's not providence, I don't know what is. And so it's a great privilege to be here, a great honor, and thank you very much for having me. Now, I'm using a Braille watch. We open it up and we touch it, and we can't go over time, you know. And I have about 7 or 8 minutes after the hour, so I believe we're to end at 1:45, then we'll have a bit of a break. But I really am delighted to be here because, you know, we share a common faith, and I'd like to talk to you about some of the things that are happening. On our globe, we have at least 120 to 150 million people who are totally blind. We have, as far as we know, 800 or 900 million, and maybe more, that have sight problems. When you add to that people who either are unable to read or have reading difficulties, we have well over 1 billion. God has allowed us to expand the ministry to where it's now a ministry to the blind and vision impaired and dyslexic and others with reading difficulties. So we try to encompass a large amount of people. Now, if you don't hear me, please don't raise your hand. Tell somebody. People are always raising their hands. It's like people say, have you been blind all your life? I always say, not yet. You know, let's not rush things a little. A lady who was over 90, she goes, oh, I know heaven's my home, but I'm not homesick yet. But she has gone on to be with the Lord. I'd like to tell you the purpose of the ministry. Our main goal is to get the scriptures and, when possible, find Bible teachers or material for those who cannot see. We're doing online Bible studies, one with Pakistan, and that's very dangerous. If you know the situation of 9/11 and you know what has been going on with so-called honor killings and other things, you will know that to be a Christian in every country is kind of like Paul Harvey used to say, it is not one world. Do you remember that? And so when we do the Bible study, and I can't even name the people, both of them are blind, if somebody comes in the room, they have to say, oh, we have to stop. Isn't that sad? We send Bibles in Braille, large print, very large print, I should say. You'll see them in a moment. Braille, large print, audio CD, solar-powered Bibles, and an electronic Bible. I think I've covered it all. And we're so thankful that through your help and other Christians who are concerned, that between 750 and 800 people, as far as we know, have obeyed the gospel. How many are faithful? Because if you're not faithful, you're just dipped, dried, and done, aren't you? But if you are faithful, then you're showing your love for what the Lord did for us. As far as we can tell, around 75% are still faithful. Some of them are faithful under tremendous persecution. The National Hindu Party, the BJP in India, is certainly putting pressure on all those who are not of that faith. And so there have been Christians, as well as people who are of the Islamic faith, who have been killed. So things in our world in many ways are tightening down, and I can't go into detail now, but if you look at Africa, there's a great danger there that those nations will be engulfed, and already are being in many areas. We had a friend from Mozambique. There was an attack made on a village not that far from him, and they slaughtered so many people and beheaded others. So we need to get the gospel of love, grace and mercy and justice to the world. And that's what we're trying to do. Now, lest I talk too long, let's have a look at a few of the things that you are helping to support. And I really appreciate the elders giving me all this time. And you know, if you've heard me speak here, and I hope you'll return for worship, because it's the worship's the most important thing. This is a very large print Bible. Now we get, some of these are from denominational organizations. As long as they want to present the Bible, we have a good working relationship, and it's allowed us to teach. I'm going to ask Anne to come up and pass this large print. You'll notice that the words are widely spaced, and you'll also notice that the letters are big. They're way bigger than one that you can buy. Now that volume is, I think, 20 volumes. This is a Braille Bible, but it is 1/37th of a Bible. It's the book of Romans only. Braille is very large. If you had a Braille Bible, you could not put it in a manila envelope. It takes about 4.5 feet of space. So it's written on both sides of the page, and we read it left to right. If I was reading that, yeah, you can go ahead and pass it around first.
No, look.
There you go.
Now you can read something.
There you go.
There
Thank you. See, it takes her to help me keep going as I get older. Okay, verse 14. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. So we read it like that. Now, here we go. I'll let you pass it. Thank you. Anne does the driving for me. For us, it's a whole lot safer for you if she does. I drive bumper cars, and I'm the only one going on the track the wrong way. One of the things that I think we have to understand is found in 2 Timothy 2:2. And the apostle is saying, what you've heard from me in the presence of faithful witnesses, be able to pass it on so that they can help others. You see, we sometimes don't really realize that the church can, and in many cases is, being lost in one generation. Just one. The candlesticks can and have been removed, even in our modern time. And so it's just so important that we get the gospel out and that we help to train people who can teach it. Now, I'm going to begin to pass around a couple of things. I want to give you time for questions. And I just love this table. Can I take it away? No, so often I get this real narrow thing and I don't have space to spread out. This is an electronic Bible. And can you see it? It has a keypad like a telephone. Okay, 0 at the bottom, and the hash, as we say in Europe, or the pound at the right, and the star on the left. And it's an electronic voice. You can bookmark it. You can do chapters. There's even a sleep timer. If you fall asleep, you can set it for 10 or up to 60 minutes. When I'm flying, I often set it. I don't usually sleep when I'm flying. I'm praying all the time. But I don't like flying at all. I've had some emergencies and just don't care for it. But anyway, this Bible, I'm going to see where the speaker is. Let's see if it'll read just a little bit. It's electronic. You get used to it. You can put 2 translations in each unit. And just recently, they have increased the number of translations to 50. I don't even know some of them, and you have to be careful of some of them, of course. Let's see what this is saying. I'm not even sure at the volume here.
1:10:10, comma.
Okay, let's make it read better.
Philippians 1:10. For I want you to understand what really matters, so that you may live pure and blameless lives until Christ returns.
Okay, people say, oh, how awful. If you don't have any other Bible, it's great. You can increase the rate of speaking. There's about 6 voices that I won't go into right now that you can have. And so those are fairly popular. They're around $100 when we send them, probably around $115 if they go overseas. Of course, it's more. Now, I want to make sure that's off. I've burned out several batteries, and I can't see the light, so I put it up to my ear, and if it's hissing, it's on. We also do Bible on CDs. I don't have any of those with me because you know what a CD looks like. Well, we can get those in 100 languages. Anne and I were going to do a 50th anniversary cruise, and our birthdays are the same day. I was 73 on the 4th of February. She was 72. And so we can't forget each other's birthday. And the reason I say that, this is a solar Bible. You can plug it into the wall, you can plug it into a computer, or you can charge it by the sun. I think that's the solar panel there. I think so. And these we can get in 100 or more languages. We were going to go and combine ministry and pleasure, and we were going to go to the South Sea Islands, where blind people don't get many things, and you can get about 80 of the dialects in these solar-powered Bibles. So the cruise got canceled because of COVID, so anyway, maybe another time. But I'm going to make possibly make this play here and see. I'm not even sure what book we've left it in. Now, let's try this. It was working beautifully yesterday. You know how children are when they don't. Okay, let's try this one. Yeah, I had it reverse. There we go.
Received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong. His body burst open and all his intestines spilled out. Everyone in Jerusalem heard about this.
That's not a great verse before lunch. You see. Oh. Makes you want to live a better life anyway, doesn't it? You know, but and now this one won't do as much. You can only get one translation in it, and the sad thing about it, and I'm trying to get the committee to change this. And the other one you can go verse by verse. This one you can only go chapter by chapter, and you have to find your place. But it's still a wonderful tool, and you'll probably recognize the reader. What is his name? Max McLean? Is that right? Anybody? Okay. These solar Bibles are extremely popular. We just got a request from Vijay Kuma in India, and they do a lot of work with blind people, and they requested 64, and they've given them away to people who are interested and want to know, what is this Bible? What is this Christianity? You see, we're kind of cocooned over here, but not everybody knows about the Lord. There are places in our world where the name of Jesus has never been mentioned. And so we have got to continue to be busy. And the sad thing is, while there's a lot of good, there are also a lot of dying churches. And I can never thank you enough for all that you do. How long can we continue to do this work? I don't know. I thought I was going to retire at 65, but I guess if I did, somebody wouldn't get a free Bible. So we keep going. We can't do as much as we used to. As I told you, well, maybe I didn't say it. I'm really not blind. Since birth, I got too much oxygen in the incubator because I was a twin. My brother died, and they gave me oxygen to keep me alive. It destroyed the retinas. But God, in His providence, put me into a family, a Christian family, mother, grandmother, grandfather, parents, and our family, part of them came from Ireland, and they obeyed the gospel back in the 1880s, and it caused quite a rift in the family, and I'm trying to trace as much of that as I can. Now, I want to tell you a few more things, but first I want to stop, and let me get the question thing going with this one. You saw the Braille. And is Braille an international language, or does Braille, each Braille book have to be written in its own language? Is Braille international or not? Can anyone tell me?
Yeah. I think it's one.
Yes? Did I hear all yes? Okay, the vote carries. All right, but it's no. I'm afraid. Braille is a language invented by Louis Braille, or Louis Braille, as he was known in French. He had an accident in his father's blacksmith shop when he was about, I think, 4 or 5, back around 1810, I suppose it would be, 1805. And I think he fell on 2 sharp points of scissors or something, and it put out his eyes. After a time, and they were only doing carvings, wood carvings, but Louis Braille developed a system of communication for the blind, and that became known as Braille. He didn't live, I think it was like 52 when he died of tuberculosis, but his story is very interesting. So Braille is a language that is used by about, I was talking to the Scottish Braille Press when I was over there, and they said about 10 million, as far as we know, still read Braille. So it's really only a fraction of the population, because many people have not been brought up with Braille, and when you were older, it's harder for your fingers to adjust to the dots. I've trained some people who could see to read Braille, and reads Braille pretty well, but the problem is they read it with their eyes, And I'm going, what good is that going to do you if? But every language has its own Braille. You have Irish Gaelic Braille, you have Spanish, French, German, Chinese Braille, I don't even have a clue, you know. And Greek Braille is all Greek to me, you know, because it's so different. So that gives you some idea. That's my question to you. And I want you to ask questions. Don't be shy. I do not get offended easily. I've been asked some questions by school children, because I speak fairly often in schools in Ireland and some in the United States. And I've been asked questions that I can't repeat up on this pulpit, this presentation, but I'm just not offended. Okay, so would you like to ask anything? Just speak out. Not all together. Nobody?
It's just level 2.
Mm-hmm.
How many levels of
Yes, that is grade 2 Braille that you saw. And these Braille Bibles are produced by a group called Lutheran Braille Workers. Now, they have all kinds of faiths, even some from the Church of Christ. I've met people who were 97 who were collating pages because the Braille is so big. And they do not put any religious strings on me and often ask me to speak. And so, you know, I think it would be a waste of an opportunity, and we have a great working relationship. So that's grade 2 Braille. That means that it's been shortened. That Bible that would take 37 volumes that I showed you would be about 45, maybe 44, if you didn't have shorthand. But shorthand means that a letter stands for a word. I'll give you an example. M stands for more, R stands for rather, S stands for so, and then a .5 with an O stands for one. There's hundreds of symbols to learn. And I still make mistakes, but I at least can read it, you know, myself. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else?
How did you come to spend so much time in Ireland?
Okay. Now, I heard both of you. I heard a gentleman here ahead of me, a little to the left, and a lady to the right. Let me take the first one I heard first. You asked me how I came to spend so much time in Ireland. We had been working with World Radio France. Have some of you heard of World Radio? West Monroe in Louisiana. And we were working in Belgium. Well, I'd always wanted to live in Ireland because we'd been there before, and I had distant family that were still there and was interested in it. And so in 1971 or two, we went there permanently. 73, early 73, for like 23 years. And the children were both born there. And I'd always wanted to do that, and the Lord allowed us to help set up congregations. And things in Ireland were very, very difficult then. We were told off very severely by some nuns because we were teaching some children, you know, the Bible. And then the year before we got there was a priest who said he was going to blow up the building. But I'm happy to tell you that things have changed, but not all for the better. Many people have got away from religion. When we were there, 92% of the people went to Mass. Many didn't believe it. And I asked a man, he said, I don't believe this and that. I said, well, why are you going then to Mass? And he says, oh, it's easier to go than to be talked about by the neighbors. And so, you know, but now, if you could find 25% of the people who went to Mass, you'd be doing well. So, you know, that's the way things are.
Mention the AIM groups. AIM.
Yes, I'm glad she reminded me. In 1974, we were in Dublin before we moved to Cork, Ireland. And in Dublin, we had a group that came known as AIM. Have some of you heard of AIM? Adventures in? There you go, missions. And we were the first, I think, in Europe to host the group. There were 16 of them, and a great friend of ours, Lyman and Marinas, who is now gone to be with the Lord, he went, was the guiding the group, and they were there for 2 years, I believe that's 2 years. And in that group was Wayne Reed, and all of you know Skipper Reed. And Wayne is now in New York. So that group, you know, came and helped. And we also have various connections in Ireland, and that's kind of why we're there. I hope I answered you okay. And I heard another question from a lady on the right. Can you ask it again, please?
Yes, sir. How many different versions, for example, King James, NIV,
Mm-hmm.
American Standard,
Mm-hmm.
how many different versions do you have in Braille?
The one we are offering now is the NIV. We could get the King James, maybe the New King James. We have to be careful. We don't want it so modern that it loses its meaning, and that can happen. On the other hand, we want it modern enough that people can understand it. Now, I love and was brought up with the old King James. But you talk to some of our young people today and ask them what propitiation means, or some other words. And so we are using now, the Braille Bibles are NIV. They're kind of a cross between the ultra-modern, like the NLT, and the old KJV, because many of our students are foreign. Now, we just got another request for a Braille Bible in the Telugu language. It's one of the languages of India, Telugu, Telugu, I believe.
Telugu.
No, that's Telugu. I thought there was a U at the end. I'm not sure. Yeah, take out your phone. No. It's just, it's a sin, what you can find out quickly on your phone. Anyway, it's the Telugu language of India. And I have to ring England because they're hard to get, and we pay for them to be made. And some of our Braille Bibles have been carried on the I guess you'd say, baskets of donkeys up mountains in Mexico. Some of them have gone to Syria before the war, and they were going to Iraq during that war, and people were absolutely excited to have even a part of a Braille Bible in Arabic. And so, did that answer you? Did you have something else? Sure. Anyone else at all? I'll ask another question then. Where would you think would be the most difficult part of the world to get Bibles into successfully? Anybody want to try?
China. She said China.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, whoa, yeah. Yeah, I've got to get in a blimp and go over there. Yes, both of those are right, and you might actually have trumped what I'm saying. In our experience, the most difficult place to get them into is the Islamic world. We've had them, reports of the Bible, cartons of Braille Bibles burned on the dock in Indonesia. We've had other situations, but I think that if we tried to get them into North Korea en masse, it would be very, very hard. And I'm not sure how many would know Braille there. It used to be easier to get them into China than it is now. There was also a great opening in the early 90s when the Soviet Union had collapsed. And now that opening is very quickly closing. It's possibly already closed. They're putting so many restrictions that you can't teach any Bible in an apartment, and so many more. And right now, with the current situation with the Ukraine, is virtually impossible. You might be able to post a Bible in. There was a church in Fort Worth some people were going to Russia, and each of them took a couple of volumes of the Braille Bible and got them into Russia, but that's been like 10 or 12 years ago. By the way, do you have a buzzer? No?
Yes.
Yes. I wish our church would get one. It's so much. Well, it keeps people from going on and on. You've got 5 minutes or whatever, or do something that if you go overtime, it flings you into the baptistry, whatever. But try to. But so those are the places that we have trouble, and some doors are closing in some of the African nations. Mali, they're having a lot of Islamic terror attacks, and Burkina Faso, and all these nations that we read about. So that's the situation with getting the Bibles in. to different places. Now, any other questions at all?
This is more of a personal nature, but
Okay.
I'm fascinated with your ability to be conversational in all those languages. How did you realize that you could be conversational or learn French?
Okay. I just had it put down on my CV so people would believe it. I paid them a lot of money to do it. Thank you for that question. I began listening to shortwave radio when I was 4 or 5. Now, it was an old transoceanic zenith shortwave radio that my mother had, and I kind of took it over, and she got it for her graduation in school. And, you know, I would tune around and hear different languages and different things. And one day I said, Dad, we're getting Radio Moscow in English. They said, don't lie, because it was just a little whip antenna. So I brought him over there and showed him Radio Moscow when they were on shortwave. And then, I'd always been interested in languages. And then we had a friend named Etiennette Morgan. And Etiennette was Jack Morgan's wife. She was French, and she would help. I began to learn it some in school, some with the group called the Alliance Française. You have one in Fort Worth, I'm pretty sure. And then they said, would I join the executive committee, because they couldn't find anyone else. And I just began to learn languages on radio, then travel in various countries. We lived in Arabia. Later, my parents lived in Egypt. Either you love foreign languages. Well, they're not foreign when you're there, but we love other languages or we don't. Some people love them. I'm no good at math. I'm so thankful for my talking calculator. And we have all these new things. That's an iPhone. Now, I won't do it now, but we have over 150, well, probably 100 gestures we have to learn. I don't know them all. The iPhone and I are sort of in a constant state of war and frustration. Some of you agree with me? Yeah. I still like my old flip phone that just makes a phone call. Amen. That's great. That puts the seal of heaven on it when you hear an amen. I love it. But they are, for example, if we want to open an app, and I have everything turned off right now, we have to do a double finger tap. We have to do a 3-finger tap to close it. We have to do a swipe for this. We have to do a 1-finger tap for that. And you have to learn these gestures, and I sure do miss the old phones, but anyway. So there's all sorts of things, and I must admit that Apple, they did a fantastic job, and if I would buckle down and spend a little more time learning it, I'd probably be better. I've got friends who almost pray to them. I mean, they're blind and they love their iPhones. But Apple and I have sort of a running battle. But we're okay. Who else has a question? And then I'll just mention a couple of more things before we finish. Anybody? Okay, I think we've got 10 minutes or so. You would not believe some of the places that our Bibles go to. Some of them go to cardboard huts in India, where there's no real postal address. Others of them go to the jungles of South America. We've sent Bibles to schools in Honduras, where there's a very high crime rate at the moment, and many, many other places. And I guess I'll mention this now. And it has to do with the providence of God, because our lesson, Lord willing, has to do with evidence of the resurrection, to try to bolster our faith. But just to show you how God's providence works, Anne and I were working in France in 1972. And there was a correspondence course that you took from World Radio, I believe. And when they answered enough questions, and if they expressed the request for more Bible study or the request to be baptized into Christ, we went down, and we had a colleague from France also. We went down or up or wherever we were going to go, and we baptized them. We basically were in France, parts of Belgium, Switzerland. Well, it was a long way down, but we got a request from a man who was 93 named Monsieur Picard. Monsieur Picard and his housekeeper, Madame Mercier, who was in her 70s, he had gone blind fairly late in life. And she would read the Bible courses to him, and we would, and she would record his answers, write them down. There was no internet then. And in that way, the lessons would come back to us. He studied enough, and he wanted to be baptized. We had to bring a portable baptistry to them, because now it looked like a bathtub, sort of, kind of, was it plastic, Anne? Or fiberglass, okay. And we carried it on the top of our Peugeot, the car, and we had to find enough warm water to fill it so it didn't kill the poor man when we baptized him, because hot water, as you will know probably, is at a premium in some areas in Europe. And then we had to get it, I think, up kind of a winding circular stairway to where it needed to be. And I think we filled it with buckets of water, maybe? Anyway.
We filled it, by bucket.
By bucket, yeah. Same way in Ireland, we baptized a friend who recently died, and it was a cold night, and we had a plastic swimming pool, and we filled it up, and it was freezing even when Anne and her friends put 2 or 3, many buckets of water in it, boiling water. You just couldn't heat it up. So that was a quick baptism. But we did all the preliminaries before the baptism, But anyway, okay, do I have 2 minutes? Okay, somebody nodded at me, thank you. But he was baptized, and he said to us afterwards, "Je suis content que je suis non-voyant." I'm glad I went blind. I'm glad I'm blind. Well, I wake up in the morning, but I don't go, "Lord, thank you for making me blind." There's challenges to it. But he says, "I'm glad." And I said, "Pourquoi? Why?" He said, "Because if I hadn't gone blind, I wouldn't have switched on the radio, and I wouldn't have heard the radio program that you present," or I didn't, friends do, called La Voix du Salut, the voice of salvation. He said, and basically he had used religion for christening, marrying, and burying. But then he became a Christian, and I believe very firmly that he's gone on to be with the Lord. So what providence God works in our lives. Don't ever forget that God, according to Romans, is always working for our good, even though it may not seem that. I thank you very much for having me, and I hope that we can learn more in the coming lesson. Thank you, and I thank the elders, especially in the mission committee.